Hello, everyone. Welcome to the B2B SaaS podcast. I'm your host, Upendra Varma. Today we have Griffin Parry with us. Griffin here is the founder and CEO of a company called Meter. Hey, Griffin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Pedro, very nice to be here.
All right, Griffin. So let's try to sort of get a sense of what your company does, right? And what your product does and why customers are willing to pay you money.
So Meter exists to help B2B software companies. So there'll be many listening to this podcast, deploy pricing as a growth lever because it's highly effective, helps you grow faster and more profitably. In terms of how we do that, provide the operational capability they're missing. So our product we call a pricing operations platform, and it helps B2B software companies who are using usage-based pricing strategies, which is most of them, bill painlessly, distribute data about customer spend and usage wherever it's needed throughout the business, and to make pricing changes easily.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So, and I just want to get a sense of how you are different. So, most of these B2B SaaS companies, right? So, they use one of these subscription management sort of platforms, right? You heard about Chargebee or all of these platforms, right? Where you can sort of do all of this, where you can bring in all of your customer data and sort of have this, right? So, where exactly do you sit in this space, right? So, how exactly are you different, or like what exactly are you sort of doing here?
We're complementary to those types of players. So Chargebee, you mentioned they're a good partner of ours. And essentially we help them work in a scenario where the customer is using usage-based pricing strategies. And I'll tell you why. You need to feed those systems with the amounts that need to go on the bill. And if you're doing usage-based pricing, you need to bring usage data together with pricing data and combine them to work out what the amount should be for each customer. So that needs to happen before you get to Chargebee. So that's what we do.
And let's talk a bit about the product here, right? So how exactly are you doing this, right? I could imagine, I mean, if I'm a software company, right? So my data could be sitting at any layer, right? It could be at the database level, or it could just be sitting in some other external platform, right? I could just store that data anywhere, right? So how exactly are you solving this from a product perspective?
So our customers broadly fall into two camps. So some of them are looking for a primary usage data tracking mechanism. And so that they'll deliver us usage data via our API, and we do all the process of ingesting it and transforming it and cleaning it. Other companies, and remembering that most of our customers are scale-ups who have already been successful. So we're helping them sort of cope with increasing complexity in their business. They already collect this usage data. And so we can just take it from wherever it exists. Like the last thing we want to do is ask people to rip and replace something. So if it's sitting, for example, in an analytics database, we can ingest from there as well.
Makes sense. Right? So just talk about these customers that you've been mentioning, right? So who are these customers, right? Who are you primarily trying to serve, right? So just talk a bit about, your existing customer base today.
I'll tell a story about the individual because that'll bring it to life.
Sure.
So the broad comment is that our particular area of focus is scale ups. Mm-hmm. So it's companies who are being successful, but their success is creating pain in their organization, which is an obstacle to further growth and further success. But I'll make it specific to an individual. So imagine you are a finance person in a company like this, and you've got to do billing every month, and your business is getting more complicated. Like, a couple of years ago, you only had a few customers, you only had one product, you're only in one geo. You didn't do much private pricing because you didn't really have a sales team. Now your world is much more complicated. You've got, hundreds of thousands of customers, multiple products, multiple geos. You've got a creative sales team that's doing all this private pricing. And every month you've got this awful process where you've got to go and get usage data and ask an engineer or a product person to send you the right usage data. And then you've got to get the pricing data from wherever it is and make sure that it's all up to date, depending on any renewals or new deals. And then you've got this painful spreadsheet that you've got to set up all this complex logic in, and you process it, and then you work out how much you need to charge each customer. And then you've got to feed that information into your revenue stack, wherever they sit. It's a nightmare. So it's incredibly painful, but more importantly, it's very error prone. And so, you're making errors on bills that undermine customer trust, but also, and you really care about this because you're a finance person, causing a lot of revenue leakage. You're not billing for stuff that you should be. Sometimes you're aware of it, Sometimes you're not aware of it. So anyway, so that's the person who we help. The burning pain point that our customers have when they first come to us is always about billing.
Mhm.
We go on to solve other problems, but that's the first key pain point. And it really becomes acute when the customer's being successful.
Yeah.
So that's why I describe our ICP or our target customer as a scale up.
Makes sense. And it just give us a sense of what, these customers. It's how many paying customers do you have on your platform today, approximately?
So, I mean, we are, so in terms of our company stage, we're a classic Series A business.
Mhm.
So, we did our Series A raise 9 months ago. We've got 30 or 40 paying customers in our ICP type stage.
Mhm.
Um, and, they tend to be $50 million plus ARR, some that are slightly smaller, but, 100 or 200 people plus. They've got some complexity in the business.
Yeah.
They probably at Series B or Series stage funding or beyond. And they pay us a reasonable amount of money
And
because
what,
this is a big problem to
approximately
solve.
how much is that, right? So, and how do you price, right? So
I
just
could-
give us a sense. I don't
I-
want the exact number. So I'll ask
Yeah.
you three questions. Right? Is it $1,000 per year? Is it $10,000 per year? Or is it like $100,000 per year? I'm just getting a sense of, this so that we could understand your sales motion better.
It, so the ACVs are high because we have a direct sales motion and we need to be able to support the cost of that. So it's part of the extreme of the scale you just described.
So it's more around $100,000, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
All
This
right.
is an important problem and it's business critical for our customers.
And then how do you sort of charge, right? So like how exactly do you charge your own software, for example, right? So is it again usage-based metrics or is it based on the number of customers they serve? Like how does it work?
I mean, I would preface the answer by saying we're still a relatively early stage company. So we have experimented with, various different ways of pricing, but we do seem to be settling on
Mhm.
sort of a standard. Now our customers all deploy usage-based pricing
Mhm.
of some description. That's the reason they're coming to us.
Yeah.
So you'll be unsurprised to hear that we also have usage-based pricing.
Yeah.
So we basically price based on the amount of data that you deliver into the platform
Mhm.
and the number of times you're asking the platform to calculate a bill. So
Mhm.
if you only ran billing, if only used Meter to run billing once a month, it would be the number of customers you have multiplied by basically by one
Yeah.
for each month. But the number can be much higher than that because if you're using me to deliver up to date bills in mid month to sales teams who want to know what the latest is,
Yeah.
customer success teams, or maybe the product team is using it so that there's a billing dashboard exposed to the end customers that's always up to date. So basically, it's amount data in or bill calculations out.
Yeah.
But because our customers are those slightly mature businesses, they value predictability. So almost all our deals involve a significant minimum that includes a generous allowance. And then if they exceed the allowance, they'll pay us overages.
And so just give us a sense of how you're growing, right? So last 12 months, right? So how many customers you had around 12 months ago, right? Today, right? So approximate numbers.
So we're in that phase where we know we've got a product, we know we can sell it. We know that our customers love it. So I'm in tinkering mode at the moment. Like my whole focus is how do we scale the business effectively? How do we grow quickly and efficiently? So yes, we are growing fast at the moment. And
So
my role as
you had
CEO
more
is,
than 20 customers 12 months before. Is that how it was?
sorry, Ben,
So
I didn't catch that.
how many customers you had 12 months before today, right? So is it like 20, 10, 15? So I just want to understand like at which stage you are, right? In terms of, number of customers that you're acquiring.
I mean, we're kind of in the we are growing fast,
Sure.
basically. So we're sort of like revenues are sort of like tripling year to year or more. So it's at that
Yeah,
kind of rate.
that's a
The
good number that
different,
I can work with, right? I think let's
yeah,
move on to other things here. So like
yeah.
where you're growing, right? So I just want to get a sense of how your top of funnel works, right? And then we'll talk about your conversion as well. Right? So just from these are big deals, right? So how are you finding them? Like what's that first touch point for you, right? In terms of reaching out to these leads, like what channels are you really working on?
So we have 3 channels, which is probably quite a lot for a business at our stage. So underpinning it all is like we do quite a lot of work around branding and messaging and content because that supports all of our channels. And then the 3 channels are we have an inbound channel. So we capture the demand mostly via the website, but it's generated by all the work we're doing in branding, messaging, and content, and that creates a steady drumbeat of opportunities. And some of our biggest customers has been acquired by that route. Then we do targeted outbound. So we do the work of working out which customers we'd like to win, working out what's a good indicator of a good customer, creating lists, and then finding ways of reaching out and starting a conversation with them. In the early days, it was actually mostly focused on asking venture capitalists to introduce us to companies in their portfolio. It's an easy conversation to have because we're a B2B company, it sells to B2B companies. So B2B, they're interested in talking to us as potential investment, but it allows us to ask for introductions to their other companies. So, but then it sort of, it progressed into a more sort of standard, progressive BDR approach. And then the third channel is partners. And so you mentioned in your first question, like, how do we work with subscription management and revenue management platforms like Chargebee? Well, we partner with them. So Chargebee is a great example of that.
That makes a lot of sense, right? So I think at this stage, right, I think you're more worried about your conversion and how it all works, right? How do you convert that customer to convert that potential lead or the customer that would be converted to an actual customer? So just give us a sense of how your sales cycle work, and also just talk about who these customers are, right? What exactly are they doing today to sort of solve this problem? Are they using something else, or they're hacking it up, or what's happening? Who are these customers, and how are you acquiring them? What's that sales cycle look like?
So we're selling into the CFO or the office of the CFO.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do sell into product, but it's mostly into the office of the CFO. There are other people on the buying committee. So engineers are important because they are people who implement, and it needs to be built in a way that they respect and want to work with. And various operations teams around the business are the users. So rev ops, sales ops, fin ops, billing ops, you name it. But we're really selling into the office of the CFO. In terms of what they're doing now, they're either doing this based on spreadsheets, so a very manual based process using spreadsheets, which can't code as they scale and are successful. It just doesn't work anymore. And the consequences of it not working are really significant. Like revenue leakage, for example, it was a big problem. Or they have built bespoke tooling to automate this. But the problem with bespoke tooling is it's expensive, not just to build, but to maintain. And it's also pretty inflexible. And you're asking an awful lot of your engineering team to anticipate everything that tooling will need to do, whereas we're a specialist vendor and we've got lots of customers. And so we might more fully featured and we can deliver the capabilities as they're needed. But so they're either replacing a spreadsheet or a bespoke piece of tooling.
It's mostly not one of your competitors, I'm assuming. Okay, so let's talk about the sales cycle, right? Now that we understand, right, where they're coming from, right? What happens, right, once you reach out to them, right? How long does it take to close a typical, $100,000 deal for you, right? How many touch points? What do you do during those times? Do you have any implementation, right? Any paid demo? How does that even work? Just give us a sense of how it's working.
So the sales cycles are relatively long, but it's not necessarily to do with us as a product, but more the customer understanding the business process transformations they'll have to be going through. So the implementation of Meter will be part of a broader change in the business, because our customers have worked out that operationalizing pricing, or particularly usage-based pricing, it's quite hard. You need to change the way you do things in various places. And it's not just about billing. It's about making sure that usage data is available wherever it's needed, and you can make changes to pricing easily. So that they're changing a bunch of stuff. And so a lot of what's going on in the sales cycle is explaining that Meter can do what they need. And so there is quite a lot of high contact, sort of high value add conversation, because naturally a customer will be wary of whether a vendor can meet their business specific complexity. And it's one of the things that differentiates Meter, that they can. But then they'll reach a point where they go, right, I want to buy this. And then it's sort of, you shift into a slightly different phase where we're basically providing them with reassurance that they can minimize and manage the risks of what looks quite complicated remembering this is critical infrastructure. So there is, I mean, look, it's usually long, but you need to hold the customer's hands because they're going through a quite scary transformation. And once they've committed, there is, the implementation depends on whether they're doing this on a greenfield basis, where they haven't had anything like this before, whether they're replacing an existing tool. Most of our customers are replacing something. So, there's a little bit of work to do to make sure that you're running everything in parallel, making sure that it's working effectively, go live. But it's what we do all the time.
So how long does it take? Are we talking about weeks, months, quarters, right?
It's a bit difficult to give an average, but let's say from first sales contact through to go live is probably about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the sales cycle could be a little bit longer because they'll do more of their thinking and planning about implementation before they commit. Sometimes it could be a bit shorter, but then the implementation is a bit longer because you're answering some of the questions in the implementation phase. But it's roughly 6 months, something like that. I mean, if you're dealing with a greenfield customer, somebody who's never done it before, then this and has no customers, it's a day.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the migration of existing customers, billing for existing customers onto a new system that creates the timeline.
That makes a lot of sense. So Griffin, just talk about that 0 to 1 journey, right? How did it all start and how did you get those first couple of customers? So just talk about that journey.
So we're repeat founders, and we had that classic story where we're solving for a pain point we had direct ourselves. So my co-founder and I had a business called GameSparks before, which was a cloud infrastructure business focused on the video game space. And we deployed usage-based pricing strategies. And we experienced a lot of, it works for us. It's great as a go-to-market strategy. But we experienced a lot of operational and go-to-market pain associated with it. We sold that business to Amazon and then worked at AWS in our earn-out for 3 years. And they're also a usage-based pricing company. And we saw that they had exactly the same problems. And we also saw the tooling that they built to solve for those problems. So we became convinced there was a big opportunity here. And we left AWS to found Meter to solve for it. We were still pretty humble though. We did a lot of discovery conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked to, I would say 60, but I actually think it's probably more like 80 or 90 companies, and just to really understand the problem. And then we started propositioning some of those discovery conversation people and saying, look, we want to build this. Like, will you be a design partner? So we did the classic thing of recruiting a small group of design partners and co-creating the platform with them,
mm-hmm.
launching them, making sure they were happy, using it properly in production, and then go properly to market. So that was our 0 to 1 journey. It was actually 0 to 5, but you get the idea.
That makes a lot of sense. Right? And how much have you raised in terms of external funding so far, and how big is your team today?
We've raised about $31.5 million in external funding. So we chucked in a bit of pre-seed funding ourselves. And then it's worth saying, for context, that we founded the company at pretty much the best time you could ever found
mm-hmm.
a company doing our kind of thing. So we founded it in the autumn of 2020.
Yeah.
And so that was just getting into the go-go times where, there was a lot of money around and it was relatively easy to raise. And because we were repeat founders, we basically raised quite a lot quite quickly. So we raised an initial $2.5 million seed round. And then 8 or 9 months later, we got a preemptive offer for another $10 million from big US VC. And then another $5 million about 5 or 6 months later from another big US VC. And then we raised a $14 million Series A about 8 months ago, led by Notion Capital in the UK. So it's one of those, because what we're doing is critical infrastructure. You have to build quite a lot of product to reach a genuine MVP. I'm not sure whether we would have been able to build Meter had we not found it in those funding conditions, but we did. So we are where we are.
Makes sense. And how big of a team are we talking about today?
Oh, sorry. About 60.
60. All right. So just one last question here, right? So what's that next milestone you're targeting as a company, and how do you intend to get there?
Well, it goes back to what I said before. Like my whole world at the moment is about tinkering and tuning and building a machine that can scale for a long period. So I just want to, we're very focused on the business at the moment. We just want to continue to deliver that growth, and for that growth to be efficient and profitable. I suspect the next big milestone will be raising a Series B. I mean, we're relatively committed to the VC funding path. It's different from what we did last time. We're very lucky. We got some great investors. So yeah, I think that's the obvious next milestone, but we'll see.
And what are the internal goals, right? When we'll actually take that money, right? So what are you looking at? Is it in terms of revenue, or what exactly are you looking at?
I mean, there are some rules of thumb out there in the market about, you know, what kind of ARR you need to have to be sort of in the Series B zone, which is sort of like you'll know better than me, but it's about sort of $10 million ARR is sort of where you need to be for Series B. But for me, it's not just that we are hitting the marks that would allow for us to raise. I also want to feel really confident that I knew what we would be doing with the money that we would raise.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's just a milestone on the journey. It's not the destination.
And what do you plan to do with that money that you're going to raise? So
well, I mean, the goal is to build, you know, a probably decent B2B software company.
Yeah.
So like the goal that I have in my head is $100 million of ARR. That's where I want to get to. Like, we have some unfinished business from our previous startup. We did get to that level. In fact, we didn't get to that level by quite a way. So I would like to experience the journey all the way through to that point. At that point, I've got no idea whether I would be suitable for the business anymore, but I would love to go on the journey to that point. So yes, that's the goal in the middle distance for us.
Yeah. All right, Griffin, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Hope you scale Meta to much, much greater heights.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.